All right, hello everybody. Welcome to another episode of Talking Buffalo Podcast, part of the Blue Wire Network. I'm your host, Patrick Moran. Thank you very much, as always, for locking in on the audio side, on the video side. So it's Casual Friday, and I have Aaron Quinn from Cover One with me. Going to talk to Aaron in just a quick second. And again, for people who are regular listeners to this podcast, but maybe you haven't listened in the last week or so, Joe Yurden has been doing Fridays with me for the past year or so. Joe is now going to be on every Tuesday with me. Aaron Quinn, Cover One, my guy, is going to be my Casual Friday guy. I'll have a couple of Wednesday random episodes throughout the month where we'll have different rotating guests. Before I get there, I kind of want to get your comment on this, man, because you kind of sort of similar in Maine. We were talking a little bit before we started taping here in terms of a benefit. So again, if you know me on Twitter or especially Facebook, or you've listened to this podcast, I've talked about this a couple times. One of my closest friends, not the greatest way to start out a Casual Friday podcast, but one of my best friends in the world has stage 4 colon cancer that is now spread to his liver. It's quite frankly, it's pretty a gloomy diagnosis. Anyway, a group of us worked really hard to put a benefit for him together in Lackawanna. We did that this weekend. We went into it with the expectation, or the hope, I should say, of raising anywhere between maybe $6,000 to $10,000 to help him out with, medical bills, living costs, stuff like that. Well, I'll tell you what, man, we ended up raising almost $20,000 on Saturday. It was unbelievable. And I just wanted to take a real quick second here because, look, there were a lot of volunteers. I'm not going to name all of them. It would take me half this podcast to do that. They know who they are. Everybody worked really hard behind the scenes, did an amazing job. But for a benefit to be successful, I think you need to have, besides generous people, you also need to have great prizes, things for people to want to spend their money and put in for baskets. And we had, man, between the general auction and the big ticket items and gift certificates, we ended up having like over 130 prizes. And I just wanted to take a quick minute here at the top to thank a handful of people. And I got a couple things written down here. These were amazing prizes. And again, this was getting people to maybe spend more than they initially thought they were, because these were just such amazing prizes. I want to thank Jennifer Lathrop. She gave us Bills tickets to raffle off. The Suarez family, an autographed Lawrence Taylor helmet, which was awesome. My cousin, and by the way, I'm fighting through a cold here too. My cousin Colin, they hooked us up with a Keurig and some other stuff. Orville's gave us a nice chest freezer. Shay's Performing Arts donated tickets to Paw Patrol. The Buffalo Sabres stepped up real nice. We sent a letter out to them, and they gave us an autographed Craig Anderson hockey stick. That was great. My friends Dave and Lisa Leach, they donated a Bills table and a tailgate basket. Tommy and Meg Stein, an autographed framed Andre Reed jersey. Robert Giammer gave us an autographed Magic Johnson jersey. Katie Anasanzo gave us an autographed Stefan Diggs helmet or mini helmet with some other stuff. Was amazing. What else we got here? Chicks does D's Corner. A couple Bills canvas prints, which, by the way, Aaron, if you can see in his background, he's got some Scott Flick artwork, which is amazing. There were some really cool prints that I need to get here for my studio. So that was great. We had a Michael Kors purse, a signed Trey White beer sign, an autographed Greg Rizzo jersey, which you don't see a lot of those. That was from Collectors Haven. And then
that value is only going up too.
Yeah, for sure. And then the big one, my buddy Joe Rodriguez really came through. Gave us an autographed signed Josh Allen jersey. And I'm telling you right now, there was literally 2 baskets or 2 paper bags. We had to get a second paper bag full of tickets. That thing had, they were $5 a ticket.
So I was crazy to have the whole city of Buffalo put
that
in
raised,
on that one.
That raised over $1,000 itself. Yeah. And then last but not least, man, look, Imperial Pizza, I got to throw this out there. When we were putting the benefit together, I went to them and I explained the situation. And long story short, they gave us well over $500 worth of free pizza. Then charged us 1 penny. No, they don't know personally who Ryan even is. I mean, Ryan, Imperial's like Ryan's favorite pizza place, but whatever. They don't know him. They didn't have to do that.
He didn't work there or anything.
They could have gave us a couple party pizzas and then said, all right, we'll give you a discount on the rest. Nope. Tell us what you need, boss. That was word for word what they said. I told them, and they came through with tons of food. In fact, during the benefit, we had more people than I thought, and we were running a little bit low. Call them up within an hour, bam, 5 more
That's
party
awesome.
pizzas. I love highlighting places that give back to the community
Yeah.
because there's so many great pizza and wing places throughout Western New York. Some of them are generous, some of them not so much. I mean, this is a place that just, and trust me, I know firsthand, man, Imperial Pizza, they always give back. So I just
Yeah.
wanted to throw that out there.
I was going to make the joke that they were just giving back to you for all the years of wings that you've purchased. They're just giving back, you keeping the lights on there.
That's funny. But
Yeah.
man, huge shout out to all those people I just mentioned. Many more I
Hey,
didn't. Again, I'd be
my-
going through this whole podcast.
My hat's off to you and everyone that organized it. We were talking offline. We started a benefit, a similar, not cancer. A friend of mine, really one of my best friends, business partner, passed away a few years back now, and we started a foundation in his name. And he didn't die of cancer or anything. He had issues with seizures in his brain, and so it wasn't really towards that. It was for hunger prevention. Was supposed to head this weekend. It was an event as well this weekend. Was supposed to head down there for it. It was a 5K and a disc golf tournament. We set all this stuff up, but the point I'm saying is, organizing and whatever the event is to get a bunch of people together and get a bunch of things together is it really is a lift with everybody's lives and all the other stuff you have to do every single day. So kudos, hats off to you and everyone else that helped organize. I'm sure that your friend absolutely has a full heart here this week with
the best
all
part.
Everything that was given. Yeah,
That's the best part. And quite frankly, I had some tasks just like everyone else, but I mean, there was a group that they went far, way above and beyond organizing. When you put a benefit together with 100, 200 people, it is a lot of work, a lot of organizing, getting everything together, tagging everything, keeping everything organized. These girls and a couple guys, they were just,
and you don't know if it's going to be successful. You're putting in a ton of work and you have it could be a total flop.
I was last Saturday completely, utterly stressed out because you're right, man. You put all the work together. You got these great prizes. You've done all the work. And until the event, you never know how it's going to be. You always got anxiety.
A lot of people are having events. A lot of people are asking for money, right? So you never know how it's going to play out. I was a little worried. We were putting a lot of effort into the event that we did. Not as much me, but the people associated to it. And I just kept thinking, like, I felt really bad if it was going to not be what they thought it was. And then I got reports from this weekend of the event that I was helping plan where they shattered what they assumed they were going to bring in for donations and stuff like that. And so there was a lot of good positive vibes, but kudos also to people. You know, this one didn't have necessarily the prizes and things like that, but kudos to people continuing to give their money, right? And to help other people in need. You know, it's you spend a lot of time on social media and you see a lot of negatives about human interaction. So it's good to get into real life and see, like, hey, there's still some good people that can rally together and help each other out. That's a good feeling.
The nickname City of Good Neighbors it's really true in Buffalo. Yeah. You know, it really is, man. And by the way,
I definitely have great neighbors. If my neighbors listens to you, I want them to know that they embody City of Good Neighbors.
Like, this is Talking Buffalo podcast. I have to say this from time to time. This isn't Talking Bills podcast. I mean, we talk Bills on most episodes, but sometimes I want to highlight this city because, yeah, man, I just, stuff like this makes me so proud to be here. People are just so kind and generous. And look, there's some scumbags in the city.
Everybody's got them.
Every city in America has them. But all in all, generally speaking, it's a great
I think when
town.
stuff hits the fan, you see the best. Like, I'm not from the area, and so I don't have the ties, but like a good example to me was the November storm years back. We didn't get hit with anything in the North Towns. I had dust of snow.
Yeah, I remember that.
But everybody in the South Towns was just buried, and just the stories of people coming together and helping each other out. Just like, and we were there. We were driving down to help our friends in the South Towns shovel off their roofs and stuff and trying to get into a disaster zone. So when the things hit the fan or when people are really need it, you see the best of Buffalo for sure.
For sure. And look, man, you might not have been born and raised in Buffalo. You don't get to pick where you're from, though. You're a Buffalonian, man. You've been here long enough.
My kids are here, right? I got roots now. I got
exactly. You have your roots, so you're a Buffalonian regardless of where you're born. Again, you don't get to pick where you're born, but you do get to pick where you have a family, where you raise a family and stuff like that. And one last thing too, the best part, to your point, the money was great and it's going to be helpful, but even more than that. So Ryan is from Buffalo, South Buffalo, born and raised, lived there his whole life until about 2 or 3 years ago. He actually moved down to Florida. Again, he's my wife's best friend. He's one of my best friends. He was a groomsman in my wedding, by the way. And he's going to be turning 45 years old. So he's still young. Which is,
so sad, man. I'm sorry.
It really is. Well, he's fighting, man, and so far so good. He's doing well. His spirits are great, which to your point, beyond the money. So anyway, he's been in Florida, but he did come up to Buffalo for the benefit. So he was there to see the hugs, to see the smiles, to see him getting treated like a rock star. Everyone wants a picture with him. That was the best part, man. I can't even imagine how uplifted right now he must feel. So
Mhm.
again, just the city of good neighbors. I had to throw that out there. One other thing too, I don't know if you can hear it in my voice or me coughing a little bit here. I'm sick. I
Yeah.
do not feel well. I've taken a COVID test yesterday and the day before. They both been negative. I do know a couple people that I was in contact with over the last week or so who have tested positive for COVID. So I am being mindful and careful. I think I might just have a chest cold. I know
It's that time of year, man, too.
it
Like
is. That's
the
yes.
folks out there listening that have kids, my kids have been straight sick. Between the two of them, we have been running through tissues and cough drops for about 2 months.
Yeah.
Straight up. And then once the heater got turned on last week, like then everybody's sinuses started. I'm the only one in my family. I drink the emergencies, the whatever put into my system. As soon as somebody starts sniffling, I'm on it. But everyone else in my house sick constantly for the past 2 months. So I'm surprised this is your first exposure to being sick here this fall.
It is. And it's like there are illnesses out there beyond COVID. So I might
Yeah.
just have a simple chest
Seasonal
cold.
allergies, man.
Yeah.
Like most people I know, when the seasons change within like a 2 to 3 week window, everyone's kind of getting sick. And people think of it as just like a spring thing, but seasons change. The fall has a seasonal change. Again, kicking on your heater. I know it sounds silly, but you're kicking up a bunch of dust and stuff. Allergies,
Sure.
a lot of the times, feel like a sickness. Like I'm pretty sure my kids aren't actually sick. We've been like taking their fever, doing all this stuff. I think it's just allergies.
Yeah. One last thing, then we'll dive into a couple topics here. And we'll kind of explain some things we're going to be doing with the Casual Friday again with Aaron and now with
Speaking
Joe
of
on
Casual
Tuesdays.
Friday, I didn't want to interrupt your
Go ahead.
intro. A little bit of a downgrade from Joe. I'm sorry. I got to admit.
No.
Joe's great.
It's you guys are different. Joe brings
Yeah.
a lot on the hockey side, which I'm going to get to that in a second with you. Joe
And
brings
pop
a lot on the
culture.
hockey side. He's more of a casual football. He's more than a casual football fan.
Mhm.
The funny part about talking with Joe that I would have to explain every week is Joe is not a Buffalo Bills fan. Joe's a Detroit Lions fan. So I have to every week we're like Joe's a Bills watcher. He's not because we would talk
Sure.
Bills every week, but he's not a
Yeah.
Bills fan, whereas Aaron obviously is much more of a football guy and a basketball guy too. So I'm looking forward to the NBA season starting.
Hey, yeah, right.
We'll have some shit to talk about. One thing I want to let people know too is with our Friday episodes that I'm doing now with Aaron, we are taping these early Thursday morning. That's the way our schedule works. Aaron's got dad responsibilities before and after, and it's just easier for me to be able to do that. That was one of the problems Joe and I ran into, scheduling problems, because Thursdays can be crazy. But Thursday mornings is a good time for both Aaron and I. So just so you know, when you listen to this on Friday, if anything crazy happens on a Thursday afternoon, whether it's Bills related, sports related, any kind of related, we already have taped. So I just want to let people know that. So we're going to be taping these on Thursday mornings.
So when Odell Beckham Jr. is spotted at Duff's tonight, we might not have that for you on the podcast.
That got some traction yesterday, that Odell Beckham at the airport, which is one of the things I
Did you
do
see,
wanna...
for people listening won't be able to see, but we had our show last night. The Cover One Buffalo podcast was last night. And I always put up a sign, sort of homage to Woody Page days. I don't know, Woody Page always had the sign up behind him. Loved it all growing up. So I put a sign in mine this week was OBJ was here.
Yeah,
just because like it's so silly. Like I thought we were beyond that with the drought years of just like following planes and keeping an eye on people, but here we are.
and the
going into Chiefs week, all we care about is OBJ. Fun stuff.
Hockey. I wanted to ask you this. Now I know, because we're friends, and also we follow each other on Twitter.
Yeah.
And I know one of your kids plays some floor hockey. I think maybe was Sal's kid, Sal Capaccio.
Their kid was Sal's kid was the group right after, so I saw him every.
Okay, but
week.
You would see
his son's
him
a little bit older. Yep.
Right, but your kid's playing a little
Chad
floor hockey
from Chad
Diaminisis. Yeah,
Diaminisis. I'll always mess with his name, but his son was actually in the same one, and we didn't realize that we know each other. Like we've worked together in the past, and it was the last one. They have a parents come in and play, and then that's when I saw Chad. Like we had not seen each other the whole time. So
that's cool. Chad was just on the podcast last week. Anyway, but here's my question for you. You're not really a hockey guy, though. I mean, like,
no,
you're not a Sabres fan at all. Why? Is it because were you not around hockey growing up? Was it something that just didn't really stick for you? Like, why? There's always a reason why somebody's not into a sport. Like, what's your reason to not really be in hockey much?
Hockey for me, I think, is a tough one. I think you have to grow up in a region where hockey is really prevalent for it to be the way it is. And so like people from Western New York, I think have a different view of how hockey is maybe viewed in a lot of the other parts of the country. So I was born and raised in Connecticut up until a freshman in high school. So the majority of my life in terms of sports and influence came in that region of the country, which is kind of like, it's not really hockey area, even though we had the Whalers growing up. I used to love going to Whalers games. Like that was a fun thing. Our school would do it, like things like that. So there was some hockey influence, but my high school, my local schools and teams, we didn't have hockey programs. Like there was really none of that. I think in some of the richer areas in Connecticut, you had hockey programs, but I grew up in like pretty lower middle class southeastern Connecticut. It just wasn't a thing. Lots of basketball because all you need sneakers and a ball, right? So like everybody played basketball. There was quite a bit of football. Baseball's huge in southeastern Connecticut. I'm terrible at baseball, but yeah, no, hockey was just never really on the radar. My dad wasn't a big hockey fan. I think back in like the 70s, maybe he was into the Bruins for a little bit, but he was more always basketball, football all growing up. And so just never had that influence from anyone in my life that was big into hockey. And then I did move to Maine in high school as a freshman, much bigger. And there was a hockey team at our school. Even girls hockey in high school was a big thing back then, which was new to me to see girls hockey being a thing in high school. And so Maine was much more a hockey presence. UMaine has huge hockey presence, a big hockey school. So there's a lot going there, but it's just for me, not having that base of growing up with it, it's hard to then just like jump in and watch it. And so watching hockey on TV is hard. I do enjoy it live. Anytime somebody offers me Sabres tickets, I'm there. I used to have season tickets to the Portland Pirates, actually, when they were the Sabres farm system team. I had season tickets. We were a restaurant, and so we used them as a corporate thing, but I went all the time back then. I love going to hockey live. I don't understand all the rules. So that makes it hard. Two, it's not, and I think even hockey fans can admit this, it's not really packaged for television. Like it's not, out of all the major sports, it's probably the one that displays the worst on TV. And so that also is hard. And then the season's too long. Like even I like basketball and it's coming up here and there's some excitement, but I'm really not going to get into basketball until spring.
Yeah, right? They play 82 games.
Yeah, February I'll start paying attention. And yeah, baseball is kind of the same way, and hockey's the same way. And ultimately, it becomes a time issue. I like basketball. I absolutely love football. Football takes up 95% of my sports interest and time. So there's not much left, right, to look over. And then hockey's just there's so many games and so random of how much it's on. So it's just, at this point in my life, it's become a investment. And you know what? I probably would get more into hockey if the Sabres had been any good since I've lived here in Buffalo. But it's also hard. There's been years where I've tried to like hop on and follow the Sabres. It's hard to sit through 82 games when the team's like one of the worst run organizations in all sports.
Yeah, your boy Greg Thompson, your partner on the Cover One Buffalo podcast.
What a fraud! I'll get on him all the time about. Yeah.
He's trying. Is he really trying?
No, he's not trying.
Is he trying?
I'll call him out right now.
Is he having a little?
You
bit
don't
of
like
fun?
hockey.
Greg watches hockey games and he'll have his hashtags. Greg don't know hockey. It's kind of fun to follow my Twitter when he's doing.
I'm sure it is.
He's asking more questions or not. I'm like, are you being genuine, Greg? You really watching these games? I think he sort of is. To your point, though,
I think he enjoys the silliness of the interactions.
Yeah, he loves. I don't think Greg loves interacting with people on Twitter. Absolutely, man. I agree with you. I think when you don't grow up around hockey, it's a hard sport to get into.
Yeah.
My father was not a hockey guy. My father was born and raised in New York City. And he was a baseball and a football guy. He just didn't like hockey. It was, for me, I grew up on the west side of Buffalo, and we played all the time. I had no choice. If I wanted to have friends, I had to play hockey. So I got into it at a young age. I do agree with you, though. I think hockey is, watching it live is very entertaining. Mm-hmm. Watching it on TV sometimes, not so much. And
the breaks are too long too. Like even if you watch a period and then you have a 20-minute, right? It's about 20 minutes in between periods.
Yeah, 20-minute periods. Yeah, close to 20 minutes intermission. I think it might be 15.
I can't speak for other people, man, but like if I watch a period and there's no scoring, like it's a boring period, and then you're going to make me sit for 20 minutes in between the next one, like that's hard for me to capture the attention. I'm off on Netflix. I'm off watching YouTube. Like I can't sit and stay and wait for the game to come back.
It's been hard for this market to draw new fans too, because like you said, the team's stuck now for literally a decade.
Maybe the worst franchise in sports over the last decade.
It would be like being in a market, like I said, the Bills, how they're playing right now, would be like being a fan of the Washington Commanders. You know what I mean? It's just not going to be an exciting brand of football.
Yeah, without the dirtbag owner. But yeah, all right.
I was just wondering. So
So
People
what
who
I
are
will say though,
good.
internally in my house, there is struggle because my son had asked me to sign back up for floor hockey. He likes it. I'm cool with floor hockey. We've got friends all over the neighborhood with hockey nets, and they're big into hockey. And he's the same thing as you, right? Like he's growing up in Buffalo, and if he wants to hang out with the neighborhood kids, he's got to get a stick
You
and
gotta
learn it,
play. Yeah.
right?
Yep.
And it's killing me because my wife and I do not want our son involved in hockey at all, because it's just like there really doesn't appear to be like a middle ground where your kid can just like play rec hockey. All my sports growing up were like run by the town. They were seasonal. So it was basketball in the winter, baseball in the spring, summer, football in the fall, right? Nowadays, it seems like sports are all year long. It's travel teams. It's serious. You're in camps. You're all this stuff. So that's our terror. We're terrified of like him getting into hockey and then hockey consuming our lives, because some of the lacrosse, hockey, some of these sports become absolutely consuming, and we don't want anything to do with that in our house.
This is going to be a common theme on Casual Friday episodes because
You've been here before.
My kids
Yeah.
are all grown up. Aaron's kids are young and just getting started. So that kind of makes me a little bit envious of you. I think about this sometimes, man, what I wouldn't do to be able to kind of go back and just do it all over again, just because it was some of the most fulfilling times of my life. Watching
Just to
my
remind,
kids do things, being able to watch, like whether it was my son with sports, my daughter with dance, it's just so fulfilling. But anyway, to your point,
but
go ahead.
you don't have to deal with getting them dressed in the morning to go to school anymore.
That is nice.
So that
And
was hard this morning.
And you hit the nail right on the head. Look, if you got a kid out there, you're watching, you're listening, and he likes hockey or she likes hockey, because a lot of girls are playing hockey now.
For sure.
Great, go for it.
More power to you. Yeah.
Let me tell you this though, man. If you can avoid that shit, do it, because you are 100% right. Hockey, unlike other sports, first of all, it is very expensive.
Even if you're buying used gear, like I know people are like, oh, you can get used stuff. Like you're doing it every year with kids
still
growing.
Expensive. Kids grow, and their hockey gear lasts maybe a year or two at the very most, if you're lucky, before you got to buy new skates, new shin guards, new shoulder pads, new everything. Hockey is very expensive.
Ice time is expensive.
Playing on leagues it's expensive. Ice time, travel is insane. Ice time is insane too. A lot of these kids are playing games literally at 6 a.m. because that's when they can, or practicing at 6 a.m. because that's where only time they can get the ice, or at a reasonable rate. So yeah, man, hockey is an insanely expensive sport for youth, and it's also beyond money a very, very big commitment. So I don't know, man.
It's a lot, man. It's a lot. We're hoping golf. My kid likes golf. He likes going to the range with me, and we're hoping maybe something a little less commitment side driven.
Jay Skursky's kid is an unbelievable.
I've seen that, yeah.
Golfer, man, crushes the ball. Anyway, so yeah, point being is this. What I was getting to is you're not going to hear on Casual Friday much of any Sabres talk. Maybe a little bit here and there in passing, but what you will hear is plenty of football talk. And look, when this schedule came out,
you can crap on the Knicks if you want.
Not yet.
Okay.
I will soon enough, though. I promise you that.
It's coming.
And we'll be, Aaron's a Bulls fan too, so we'll be following along with the Bulls this season. Look, when the Buffalo Bills schedule comes out, the first thing I did is look for the Chiefs game. Because, is it going to be prime time? When's it going to be? Well, it's this week. This is a big game. And beyond the revenge point, it's just a big game, period. Because if your goal at the end of the season, if your goal is to get a bye, and if your goal is to have the playoffs come through Buffalo, that means you need to get the number 1 seed. Yep. Right now, the Bills and the Chiefs are both 4-1. I think they've kind of gotten there in different ways. The Bills have kind of run over their opponents for their 5 weeks, or they may not the Baltimore game, but for the most part they have. Where the Chiefs have really
the second half they ran over them. Yeah,
the Chiefs have been grinding out close wins this year. But anyway, regardless, they're both 4-1 right now.
Yeah,
and I looked up a stat. It was from Football Outsiders. If the Bills win this game on Sunday, they have a 68% chance to end up the number 1 seed. If the Chiefs win the game on Sunday, that drops down to 30%. So you're talking 68 to 30. And again, the goal is to be the number 1 seed. Kind of talk about this being a big game,
right?
More than just the revenge game. Now the revenge might matter a little bit, especially to fans and maybe even some media. But this is just straight up a big game. It's not another game on the schedule like some of the players are saying the right thing right now.
Yeah, a couple things to unpack here. One, this is not a revenge game. This is not a payback game. that none of that has anything to do with this game. And I know that's hard because it's the Chiefs and the 13 seconds happened and this is the next time you're playing them. And so it's hard to separate those two things. But for me personally, like I'm not going to get revenge from a regular season victory here, right? Like my revenge comes from the Bills making the Super Bowl. Whether or not they see the Chiefs or not, the revenge is getting past that next phase. And the Chiefs were the thing that blocked you.
Sure.
Winning in the regular season doesn't change that. The Bills won in the regular season last year against the Chiefs, right? Like, yeah. And so that ultimately didn't necessarily mean anything. To your point, it's a big game because of this, what's at stake, right? And Sean McDermott constantly is talking about control our controllables, right? We can only control the things that we can control. Well, you want the one seed. They talk about all the time, like playoff caliber. You just have to get to the playoffs. You have to win your division, and they know they want to win the one seed. Like those are the ultimate goals. And so, in order to control the controllables to get to your goals, it's winning this game, and that's why it's the biggest game on the schedule for the year. I wasn't sure if the Chiefs would be the other team with the Bills or not, just from the hype of what people were talking about with the AFC West. It seems like that sort of settled in and the Broncos are no good and the Chargers are kind of struggling to find themselves and Chiefs are still the cream of the crop in that in that division and in the conference with the Bills. And so, yeah, this to the Football Outsider stats, like a victory here goes a long way. It does not guarantee the one seed. We got a lot of football left. And that's probably my biggest issue with the way the league scheduled this one. You knew after that 13 seconds that this game was coming up on your schedule again. And to put it here at week 6, I think is a disservice. At 4:00 in the afternoon, week 6 is a disservice to NFL fans everywhere. We constantly have to sit through subpar quarterback play, bad teams on primetime games. And you knew when the schedule came out that there was not any better or more sought after game than watching Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen go at each other. Mm-hmm. And you put it week 6 at 4:00 in the afternoon. Like, what are you guys doing? I want this game in December on Sunday Night Football with like, we know where these teams are at. It's week 13 or whatever. And you got a good sense of, all right, but Buffalo's wrapped up the division or pretty much has a good, and this game is going to define, we know where these teams are at and it's going to define who ends up with the one seed with 4 weeks remaining in the season or something like that. NFL missed big time on that, but it's here. Bills are getting healthy at the right time. It's a big game. I think they know the stakes, but ultimately you're not going to get your revenge. And I don't want to hear anything about it. Like people that are posting on Twitter all about like, this is revenge week. Like, man, Bills winning this game is cool. I'm going to love it. I'm going to celebrate. I'm going to talk a bunch of trash on Twitter, but it does not fill the void that 13 seconds left. Only thing that can fill that is the Bills making the Super Bowl.
Last year, I thought it was important that the Bills beat the Chiefs in the regular season.
Yeah.
For the fact of they needed to be able to get over the hump. They needed to know that
show
they
themselves
can beat
they
the
could
Chiefs,
do it. Yeah.
that they could. And I do think that mattered in the postseason. I mean, they have, of course, 13 seconds happened, but the Bills didn't go away in the second half when the Chiefs came on, when the Bills struggled. They came right back. I thought
because you knew you could beat that team.
Right. This year, to me, it's all about the playoffs going through Buffalo. I truly feel that way. I'm not saying the Bills cannot go on the road and win to get to the Super Bowl. They 100% can, whether they're the 2 seed or the 5 seed. You know what I mean? So, but
it's easier the other way. You get a bye, especially now the NFL took it away the 2 seed, right? You only get one bye, and so you're not going to get getting the 2 seed doesn't do you any good. So that bye is going to help, especially the Bills have an early bye on their schedule, right? Coming up next week, which when the schedule came out, I was kind of pretty mad that we had such an early bye, but now seeing the early injuries for the Bills, it's a blessing in disguise.
Absolutely.
And there's some scheduling things where you get a little bit of a rest advantage going forward this season, but ultimately now you're going through and playing 11 weeks straight without a bye. So getting that first round bye could be huge. We've seen early in the season how injuries just decimated parts of this roster. You have 11 weeks left against some bad teams. I'm sure they'll be managing injuries and stuff like that, but that bye is going to come in handy if you can grab it.
I agree with you about this game. I can't believe it's not a primetime game.
Silly.
I'm happy in a way, though, because I would have worn the rug out in my house pacing from the morning all the way up until 8 o'clock if I had to wait until 8 o'clock to watch us. Stakes aside, isn't it just fun, though? This is Elway versus Marino. This is Brady versus Peyton Manning that we used to see every year. You know what I mean? Just as a football fan, it is so cool to see
Bird versus Magic.
Allen.
I think it transcends other sports.
Absolutely, man. And you just know that unless the national media has to cover it, if they have another assignment, they won't be watching. But for the most part, everybody is going to have eyeballs on this game, man, for sure.
Yeah, it's such a unique rivalry, right? Because like I want to put my flag in the sand and be like, Josh Allen's the best quarterback in the world, because the things I watch him do week in and week out are just it. I was sitting on my couch and there was a Commanders fan watching the game with us, and he has no interest, like no loyalty to the Bills or anything like that. And even was kind of a Josh Allen hater a couple years ago. And he was just sitting there and repetitively being like, this guy's a god. Like, what is he doing? Like, other fans are just like, this is incredible. And so I want my guy to be the best. But then I flip on Patrick Mahomes on Sunday Night Football, and the dude is just matching him every single week with just absolute incredible play. And so it culminates in these great games that we've seen them play over the last 4 years against each other, and some maybe the best football ever in that playoff game. And now you're going to get another run at it. And I think you're going to see this, if everything goes right, this rivalry might go on for the next decade. And what a blessing to sports fans, because I do think too a little bit their play is ruining the game maybe for other people. I know for me, I go turn on a lot of these other games and watch quarterbacks barely be able to throw throws that these guys do with ease. It makes it hard to then go back and sit and watch. So this is a real treat to NFL fans to get to watch the two of these guys in their primes going head to head in a big game that matters. Like outside, if you're not a fan of any team, I feel like your eyeballs are definitely still on this game. And this is like one of those ones where people become fans of Kansas City or Buffalo because they're watching in Brazil and Josh Allen just decimates a team like that. These are the types of games where you get international fans that have no ties to your regions and stuff like that. That's how big it is.
I'm glad you said that, because I think that from time to time. I watch the Saints. I watch Winston and Kirk Cousins play against each other. I'm like, oh, that's cute. You know, that's a nice little pass or whatever. It's kind of like, yeah, you almost get we're spoiled right now getting to watch Josh Allen.
They make it look easy. Some really difficult things just look, we take it for granted now.
Yeah, we do, for sure. My favorite catchphrase on this podcast, I've said it over and over, and I'll say it again now. When it comes to Mahomes, Josh Allen, if I'm Buffalo, there's not a player on this earth I'm trading for Josh Allen. Yeah. If I'm a Kansas City Chiefs guy, there's not a player on the earth I'm trading for Patrick Mahomes. Yeah. They really are side by side the two best players in this game. I want to take a real quick break, come back on the other side, and plenty more Bills talk, and then we're going to debut a new segment that we're going to be doing every Friday. So be right back. All right, I'm back with Aaron Quinn from Cover One. By the way, if you happen to be watching this on YouTube, make sure you subscribe, hit the like button, all that other stuff. I have an updated photo in the graphic of Aaron too. He made me put an updated one in. I used, every time I've had you on the show, I have an old ass photo of you. You're like, that's enough of that shit, man.
So, yeah, man, you gotta update me. I keep getting better with age, so you know I'm aging well.
What going into this game? If you have, I mean, I'm sure you have a couple concerns because they're playing a very good football team, but like you look at this team right now, beyond injuries, which again, we're taping this Thursday morning, so the Bills haven't even practiced, so we don't know what that situation is looking like. I will say this though,
better than last week so far.
Way better than last week for sure. I don't know how the questionable players, I'm sure they're going to be listed as questionable. The guys who are being limited right now, I bet my life Jordan Poyer will be playing. I can't speak for Tremaine Edmonds. It's too early to know how he's going to be, but I think you could count on Jordan Poyer playing. I think he could have played last week too if he absolutely had to. Just wanted to throw that out there. That's what I heard anyway. What's your biggest concern going into this game right now? Like, what about the Bills or the Chiefs do, or that when it comes to the Bills roster right now, what's the most concerning to you?
For this matchup, I mean, Mahomes is the biggest concern, right? Like, I hate to be a cop-out, but even if things aren't going well for the Chiefs, him being on that other side of the field just allows them to come back in any game. Like, they can come back at any point in the game because of Patrick Mahomes and his ability to just get them downfield. I think maybe my biggest concern in this particular matchup, I think the Bills are a much better team, actually, in this game. And I'm very confident about this one, weirdly. I think I would have more anxiety going into this game, but I look at it this way.
Well, it is only Thursday, though.
Yeah, it is Thursday. Check me on Saturday morning and Sunday morning. No, I look at it, man, like, my years might be off here. What, the COVID season when they got to the 2020 season when they got to the AFC Championship game, I think the Chiefs were a much better team than the Bills that year, and it showed. And then I think the next year, last year, I think the Bills evened it out. They beat them in the regular season. They hung with them, and it was just that weird 13-second debacle that was the difference in that game. But the Bills were there step for step, and I think ultimately, I think any football fan or anybody that covers the league will say that they were right there, even with the Chiefs for the year. And now I think in 2021 here, or 2022 here, the Bills have taken the step to be ahead of them, the Chiefs, in terms of, I think the Chiefs got worse a little bit. Their offensive line's better, but ultimately I think their team has gotten worse over the last 2 to 3 years. I think the Bills have gotten better. I think the depth of the Bills is suffocating to most teams in the NFL. And I think we're going to see that again here this weekend, that the depth is just too much, that there's too much star power. There's too much, not star power, just the guys, your Taron Johnsons, your, Damar Hamlin stepping in and playing well, your Tim Settle type guys. That's just everywhere you look, there's more depth on the Bills than on the Chiefs. And I think that ultimately will come out in the wash. But the one thing the Chiefs do this year that seems a bit of a different feel from teams in the past is this offense feels a lot more patient. They're willing to run the ball, the screen game, the short passing game, him getting the ball out quick, Mahomes getting the ball out quick, and they're willing to do the dink and dunk and just keep getting the ball down the field. And now it's not typical of the Chiefs where they're not scoring on every single drive like they used to. They are being forced to punt. They are again settling for some field goals, but that type of patience and being able to take what the defense gives you and then couple that with the success that they have in the red zone and the designs. Once they get into the red zone, they're money. It's the teams that are able to keep them from getting there. Now, the Bills defense is kind of a dink and dunk, bend but don't break defense. So I'm interested to see Chiefs are going to get into the red zone. What happens when you get there?
Yeah.
Because if they are able to just continue to score touchdowns and get Travis Kelce involved and keep the game close, well, then anything can happen. But if you can get a couple stops there, holding the field goals or get turnovers, I don't think on the other side of the ball they're going to be able to stop Josh Allen. Like, this could be one of those games where we just don't see Sam Martin again. And so it's going to be which defense can come up with a stop or two and get the other offense the ball one or two more times in this game. So
I agree with a lot of what you said. I think Josh Allen, whether it's balls to the wall like we saw last year in the playoffs with Kansas City, whether it's a little bit of dink and dunk and ball control like we saw in Miami. I mean, they didn't finish the job, but I thought Josh, all things considered, in the injuries, played very well that game. Ball control, same thing with Baltimore, or whether he's airing it out like he did against Pittsburgh last week.
Yeah.
There's lots of ways the Bills offense can beat you. There's two things that I'm concerned about. One of them is Elam, if he even starts at corner. I do think if Benford's good to go, I wouldn't be surprised if Benford starts.
Well, I think the benefit of those two guys too is that even if they're both a little bit limited, because they're right now in practice, Elam has the foot and Benford's still with the broken hand, that the way the Bills are willing to rotate them, I think helps for them to both be able to be out there and play this week, right?
100%. And I'll say this too. The Chiefs are still a formidable offense. I think they're a little bit more committed to running the football now. A lot of things, what you spoke, but they don't scare me. I'm not afraid to admit it. Tyreek Hill with the Chiefs, that was scary. And I think the Bills played scared against him at times on defense when he was with the Chiefs. He's a weapon that they don't have anymore. So I'm far less concerned about Elam if he's watching Scantling or Hardman or even Juju Schuster, if those situations.
You still got to guard every blade of grass. That's what scares me with Mahomes. Is like even a Scantling, if he gets deep, Mahomes will hit him. Like we saw in that playoff game a couple years ago, the Ravens game actually, and Bills got beat deep a couple times, and they just couldn't connect on those plays. And like if you let one of those guys leak out, Mahomes is going to hit him for a deep ball. So you still have to be very disciplined and guard every blade of grass. That's what makes Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen so difficult. Is you really like the Steelers last weekend, they weren't guarding every blade of grass. That's why you saw Gabe Davis get over the top. Like you got to really, they can do things other QBs can't. They can put the ball up 55, 60 air yards. So you got to guard that too.
Hey, with Elam, and let's just assume he's going to play. We don't know about Benford right now. And we know Trey White is practicing, but he's not playing yet. He struggled last week against Pittsburgh. He's one of the few guys against Pittsburgh that struggled. Now, I mean, he did have an interception, but I think the stats were he's targeted 13 times. He gave up 10 catches for 126 yards. It's not the worst game I've seen a corner play. I've seen a corner play far worse than that. So I'm not saying he was awful, but you could just sense that that's who they're going to go after. So he's going to have to be up to task on Sunday. And
I want to push back. I want to push back a little bit on that.
Go ahead.
Just because targets, like in this defense, it's a zone heavy defense. So targets are going to happen, right? Not all targets are created equal.
True.
Pittsburgh scored 3 points. Like, I'm not mad to give up 11 catches, and they weren't even really in the red zone. And so, like, what I really care about when it comes to targets is, within the game on third down. How are you playing on third down? Are you giving up first downs? Stuff like that. If you're in cover 3 and a guy gets a catch in front of you and you tackle him, I'm going to give you a good grade on that play, right? Just because it's a reception doesn't necessarily equal a guy was being picked on or whatever. In additional context to that, I think George Pickens is going to be like legit top wide receiver here in the
Yeah,
next
I
2 to
like
3
him.
years in the NFL. Like I love this guy in the draft, and now he's healthy and he's just the dude's a beast. I think he's going to do that type of thing to a lot of corners in this league, especially if you're in a zone heavy defense. But I do think they tackled well, and ultimately they only gave up 3 points, so it's hard to like really come down on him. I get it.
And he had an interception.
And he
That's
did have
not
an
nothing.
interception.
That's
Yeah.
not nothing. That's a
Yeah.
turnover. That's an extra possession for your football team.
Yep.
Look, even if Kyer Elam is your biggest concern and you look up and down this roster, again, this very well could be short term. This could be the last game where we don't see Trey White.
Right. And look on the other side of the field, right? We're talking about, we also got to remember to judge ourselves, our favorite team against their peers, right? And who are the best teams in the league? And you have the Eagles are over on the NFC, but it's the Bills and the Chiefs are the class of the AFC right now. And that roster, you look on the other side of the field and you want to talk about holes in the secondary. Like I would take Elam over really. L'Jarius Sneed's good, but I would take Elam almost over anything they got over on their defensive secondary. And so really sort of judge us against our peers. Trey's coming back. Elam's fine to get through a game like this. I think in terms of like corners rooms in the league, not having your number one healthy, they've gotten really good production out of these guys without your number one.
Yeah, there's worse flaws on this team. We used to say the same thing with Levi Walls, and he was fine.
Mm-hmm. I'm more concerned with the offensive line than I am.
Thank you, because that's
that corner situation.
I was just about to get to that. If I do have another concern, Chris Jones does have the ability to wreck games, and he has played very well against the Bills.
Mm-hmm. And Frank Clark can be hit or miss. Like if he's on, he's on.
Yeah, so they have, the Chiefs defense isn't renowned. I mean, I wouldn't call it one of the best in the NFL, but they do have the ability to get after the quarterback. They do have an ability.
Spagnuolo will dial up some stuff.
Exactly. So they're going to get after Josh Allen. And I mean, look, if it's not your day, and he might be forcing a couple turnovers, so that concerns me a little bit, but not so much the whole pass rush, because every team has a couple good pass rushers. But Chris Jones historically has just played very, very well, not dominant against the Bills. So that's something that
yeah, he's a beast. You got to keep him off of Josh Allen. Ultimately, sort of like kind of put a bow on this one for the people. And I said I was really confident. It's this matchup. It's the Bills offense versus this Chiefs defense. To your point of what type of Josh we're going to get, I'm expecting the Steelers game Josh. Like, I don't think that this secondary can hang with this wide receiver core. Like DVOA, Football Outsiders, I forget the exact number, but the Chiefs have the worst DVOA against number one wide receivers in the NFL. And you got Stephon Diggs coming into town, who is playing better with Josh Allen than I've ever seen him. And I've spoke highly. I think Stephon Diggs is the most talented wide receiver to ever wear a Bills uniform. And that includes T.O.
Sure.
I just think he's more well-rounded than anyone we've seen come through, and he's playing his best football with Josh Allen right now. And you're going up against a defense that can't stop number ones. And then what Gabe Davis just did a week ago, coming back fully healthy, and now you're going to get McKenzie back with Shakir starting to show a little bit, and maybe Dawson Knox is coming back. That's just too much. That's too much. They're not going to be able to stop that bleeding. I don't think. Maybe I sound like a total Homer fan, man, but I just can't see it.
I have an expectation that I think Josh might come out a little bit too hyped. I think it might take him a series or two to kind of calm down. I wouldn't be surprised. Yeah. I remember when Brett Favre used to play, because I was a big Brett Favre fan when he was playing. I'm not a big Brett Favre fan today.
No, not
But
today.
Anyway, I liked watching him play. And I would remember, because I was a Packers fan, besides the Bills, he would come out too hyped, and he would be throwing the ball really hard on short passes. He'd be throwing them really high. So it might take a series or two for Josh to kind of settle in. But once he does, I agree. I think he's going to be.
Although I will say, like, the last 2 years, the most interesting thing to me in the league, and you heard an interview, I urge people to go listen to it. It was, I'm going to drop his name. It's the dude that everybody goes to for arm mechanics. He used to be a pitcher. Brady worked with him. He was on Rich Eisen a couple weeks ago. I'll have to find the name and tweet it out later. Anyways, he did an interview. He's quarterbacks. Drew Brees started going to him, Brady went to him, and then now everybody goes to see him. And he was talking about in the pre-draft process, and when they had talked to Allen and had him in, they test guys for like how they perform under pressure and all this stuff. And Josh Allen had grades like nobody had ever seen, which was kind of counterintuitive to who we thought Josh Allen was as a prospect, right? It was chaos. And it was like every time he saw a big moment, he imploded in college. And even when he started in the NFL, it was just the sugar high Josh, and the moments just felt too big, and he was always antsy. Over the last 2 years, statistically, like nobody's better on 3rd and long than Josh Allen. Nobody's better in close games than Josh Allen. Like when the pressure is at its most, Josh Allen performs at his best. Look at that Kansas City game in the playoffs. Like yes, the team lost that game, but Josh Allen played absolutely flawless, perfect football. And so what I will say, I agree with you that I get a little nervous pregame that he gets super worked up, but this being the biggest game and knowing what they did last year and that taste in Josh's mouth, I think he's going to come out and just light the world on fire. Like when the pressure's at its most and his back's against the wall, I feel like he does perform at his best.
It's going to be a fun game for sure. There's two quick things I want to hit on, then I want to get to our medal stand segment that we're debuting. James Cook scored against Pittsburgh. It was a nice run up the middle. Was that just a simple anomaly in a blowout, or do you think that might be the first step in the Bills? Ken Dorsey, more specifically, starting to show more confidence in him? Because at this point, it's been a little James Cook here and there, and if he makes one mistake, you don't see him again for the rest of the game. You think it's time, maybe starting this Sunday, where you start to see more James Cook, even if he happens to make a mistake, if he drops a ball, or even if God forbid he fumbles? Or we're not there yet?
I don't know. It's tough for me, right? Because the sample size is just so small, and there still is more negative than good. Like that was a great run. It really showed off his skill set of that ability to just accelerate, right? He plants his foot and just accelerates. And the guy actually had a decent line. He just outran the angle of the defender. So you see that he presents something that nobody else in that backfield does. So I understand why they would want to go to a more, this necessarily is not a Ken Dorsey call, right? He talks about it in the press conferences every week that the running backs coach really kind of divvies up those carries and how it's going to go in the game. And so it's really going to lean on where he sees James Cook. My fear for Cook, or my concern with Cook, is when he's in the game, it's sort of a tell at this point that either he's getting the ball, or that he's going to be out, as a receiver. But him in pass protection isn't something I don't think the Bills trust. I think, again, the big concern for him is if Singletary gets hurt, I don't think the Bills feel like they can rely on James Cook to be the number one back or the guy that's taking the primary amount of snaps. And so that's why Zach Moss is going to continue to have a spot on the game day active roster, in my opinion. And I also think it's why they'll continue to get him involved in the game in case he has to come in at any point and be the primary back. I just don't think they'll turn it over to Cook quite yet. I think it will be something that takes some time. Look at Kansas City with Sky Moore. I think everybody thought, with the receiving core sort of not what it used to be, that Sky Moore would come in and just those immediate highlights that he had in college would just transfer to the Kansas City offense. Sometimes this stuff takes time. I do think Cook will continue to expand his role as the season goes on. I've always said that, but I think we'll see more December, January. As they get into the playoffs, I think you'll start to see that role become more his as they gain trust in him. But that single run in garbage time, I don't think did enough for me to say, like, okay, now he's solidly running back too.
Do you think there's any fire with the smoke that the Bills could be in the market to trade for either Barkley or McCaffrey? I just don't buy it, man.
Barkley's probably short
of Singletary getting hurt. If Singletary were to get hurt, which the way this season has went with the Bills, I wouldn't even be shocked at this point. But if Singletary suffered, like say he went out Sunday or the week after, or against Green Bay, and maybe he suffered a significant injury, maybe they make a play for running backs. You don't trust Zach Moss as your one, but short of that, do you see that happen?
Yeah, if there's an injury, for sure would probably push it. I don't think that Brandon Beane is going to like overpay to bring in a running back. And I also think that internally the Bills know a little bit of the struggles with what's going on in the run game are driven by the offensive line and the lack of physicality up front and getting that going together. So I don't know that they're panicking about that yet either. I think Aaron Kromer is a new coach. They're doing some new things along the offensive line. They got new pieces. There's been some things that look good about what they're doing. And so I think they're going to give that some time to sort of gel itself out. Let's remember, go back historically and look at the issues that pop up early in seasons for the Bills and sort of how they fix them as the season goes on. And almost typically always the thing that is kind of nagging at them early in the year, they are able to address. It was the run game for years, right? Like teams that could run would just come in and run the ball down the Bills' face. Well, there was a couple seasons ago where they sort of clamped it up as the year went on. Tight ends was the same thing, right? It was always, we got to face tight ends. What are they going to do? Well, eventually they kind of clamped that up too. And so I think this team just continues to evolve in that way.
Yeah, I agree. I would say this. No chance with Barkley. I think Brian Dable and the Giants being 4-1 kills that.
That's off the table at this point.
That's off the table. McCaffrey, I don't buy it. I still think it's more media and fan creation. But I will say, man, that would be nice. He's a much better James Cook. You know what I mean? A guy.
Yeah, and I think the injury concerns are overstated.
Sure,
too, yeah. And the cost isn't that bad. I just don't know that. I think the Panthers aren't going to do it for like they're not going to do us any favors, right?
No,
And
no.
they're looking to rebuild this entire organization, and that's probably their key piece they can get the most for at this point. So I think they're going to try to milk the value if there is any there. And Brandon Beane's not going to overpay to add that.
I don't think so either, because again, the Bills got a lot of big contracts coming up, and the way
And we
you
got to pay
restock your
OBJ.
team is through the draft. You know, you got to develop
Yeah.
guys like Shakir and James Cook. One last thing, you mentioned Odell Beckham Jr. I wanted to read a quote from you. I don't even know if you read this yet. Tim Grant from The Athletic, there was an article, and there were a bunch of suitors, a bunch of teams, and their thoughts on
Correct.
on
Yeah, I
Odell
did read
coming.
it. Yeah.
All right. Well, I'm going to read it for people quick. I won't read the whole thing, but because it was kind of long. But this is what Tim Graham wrote in The Athletic on Wednesday night. He said, "I'm told the Bills don't have an iron in this fire. Most of the Beckham the Buffalo smoke has been manufactured to this point, with his reconstructed knee not rehabbed enough to consider. It's uncertain if Beckham will be ready to play full go steps by December. The Bills also have restricted cap space." He went on to say, Buffalo's down a couple of receivers, with Crowder sidelined by a broken ankle, Kumar with a high ankle sprain. McKenzie missed Sunday's game, are recovering from concussion. By the way, he is playing on Sunday. That said, the Bills have proven to be deep. Rookie Khalil Shakir scored his first NFL touchdown Sunday. Isaiah Hodgson signed from the practice squad, got involved early, saying his first pass in the second quarter, 26-yard gain. Beckham will be explored, but it appears a lot will need to fall in place and injury issues to intensify for the Bills to commit. Sounds pretty right to me. It's fun to think about it, but that's kind of what I think too. Do you agree? Or no?
I don't know. It's a tough one for me. I also don't think that people are going to be like open. And I know Tim's great and he's got great sources and all this stuff. I don't know what his source was, but I kind of believe Vaughn too. And we've heard Vaughn talking about it, and Brandon Beane addressed OBJ, and not saying that he was interested or had an offer on the table, but like I do believe that they're interested. Brandon Beane has talked about always being interested in adding talented players. And if you look out at what's available on the street, free agency, like OBJ is probably the most talented player out there available to add to a team. And so
Sure.
I think he's on their radar. He knows Von Miller wants him. I think he knows Steph Diggs wants it. Like, you go look on Instagram and all the guys talking about bringing him in, there is some smoke here. And whether it's been official, Brandon Beane having conversations with Odell's agent and actual offers, that probably hasn't happened yet. I'm assuming that hasn't happened yet. But I do think pro scouting department has a timeline on when they expect Odell Beckham to be healthy. And I think that he is a part of the priority list of NFL free agents to bring in case something happens. And even if something doesn't happen at some point, if he's healthy and you have the ability to add him to go into the playoffs, what happens when you get into the playoffs if Gabe Davis gets hurt? What happens when you go into the playoffs if Steph Diggs tore his oblique in 2020 and played in a playoff game? Like, fantastic, but he was limited. And we've seen teams, the Bucks last year, have Chris Godwin hurt, and you can't find dudes. And when you're in the playoffs, like, you're not just bringing some guy in the playoffs to be part of your team. So I still think it's more likely than not, if OBJ plays this year, because he is able to get healthy and play this year and get into the playoffs, I do think Buffalo still just makes the most sense. He's chasing a ring and an opportunity to be on a national stage and get one more contract. Buffalo just makes too much sense, in my opinion. The other teams that were in consideration, the Rams, I don't think are competing for a Super Bowl at this point. I'm trying to think who else was in consideration. There in that article, he talked about the Bears. He's not going to the Bears.
No,
to play with
Baltimore was one of them.
Maybe, but wide receivers have not been happy there. I couldn't see Odell necessarily loving that situation. Greg brought up a great point. Like, maybe if one of the other contenders has a serious injury before the Bills are able to sign him,
like Tampa.
Yeah, although I don't know if they're legit contenders or not right now. I don't think the Eagles are in play here. I'm like trying to think of the top teams in the league that would be in play. And to me, when I look at those, the Bills still make the most sense ultimately, in my opinion.
The offense is still good even without Gabe Davis, but we saw a compromised offense when against Baltimore and Miami to an extent where Gabe Davis was way less than 100%. And then we saw a difference.
And I like Shakir, but he's not Odell Beckham Jr.
No,
you know what I mean?
Neither is Isaiah McKenzie. So
right.
Yeah, man.
He was the Super Bowl MVP until he got hurt. Like, he was about to single-handedly win that game for them. So yeah, this guy's a different talent if he comes back healthy.
One of the things we're going to do to wrap up our weekly Casual Friday with Aaron Quinn here is I've invented a little game. It's going to be called the Medal Stand. And we're going to take a bunch of topics, 3 each week, and they'll range from sports to pop culture. And again, it's the medal stand. So gold, silver, bronze. I'm going to give Aaron a topic, and then he's going to award a bronze, a silver, and a gold medal for each. Kind of basically your power ranking them in reverse order from 3 to 1. We'll add a couple other segments as we go on, and we'll make some tweaks, but that's going to be one of the fun things that I'd like to do here. So on that note, I got 3 for you, and we'll get started. Again, this is going to be called the medal stand. The first topic is you can add one former Buffalo Bills cornerback to this current 2022 roster. Your 3 candidates are Antoine Winfield, Nate Clemens, and Terrence McGee. So you can take these guys and you can put them on today's roster. Power rank them, start with the bronze and work your way up to the gold.
Yeah, first of all, how dare you disrespect Stephon Gilmore like that? But we can talk about these guys. For me, we're going 3 to 1. Terrence McGee's number 3, and I don't know that.
He's getting the bronze.
I don't know how much pushback I'll get on that. Like, I think that's pretty solid pushback. And then these other 2, I think you can sort of have a debate. But for me, silver would be Antoine Winfield. I loved his style of play. I think he could fit right into this defense. But gold goes to Nate Clemens just for the type of athlete that he was and the playmaking ability that he had. I think you add that type of splash play ability to this defense. You already got guys, in my opinion, on this defense that can come and lay the hammer and tackle. Like, I love Taron Johnson for that. And I think DeMar Hamlin sort of offers that physicality in the defensive backfield. But I want to put Nate Clemens next to Trey White and just let them go out and pick the ball off and make plays with their athleticism. Yeah, that's where I'm at. So
I agree with you with the goal for sure. And I agree with you with all of them. I would say, though, I would consider Terrence McGee for the silver a little bit more. It doesn't mean much to you, but he was an elite returner too. So
for
now
sure.
you got
Clemens could do some return stuff for you.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Well, McGee was one of the best returners the Bills have ever had. So
yeah.
There's your kick and punt returner as well as your starting corner. But all in all, I agree. Nate Clemens gets the ball in his hands, and it could be
but the right answer, Stephon Gilmore, is gold.
All right. Well, he's not a choice. I don't like Stephon Gilmore. By the way, as we're doing this, and again, we're going to tweak these as the week goes on. Maybe going forward, I'll give you the topic, and I'll give this to you ahead of time. So Aaron's going to have homework to do every week on top of all his other responsibilities. And I won't give you the choices. Like, you could have named your own bronze, silver, and gold. But anyway, that's the way we're doing it this week. So he goes Nate with the gold, Antoine with the silver, and Terrence McGee with the bronze. 2 more here. Next category, we're going to do 90s male R&B groups, and I know you're a big R&B.
This is my favorite
guy,
genre.
by the way.
Yeah.
By the way, there'll be plenty of R&B stuff going on with this Casual Friday podcast. But anyway, the choices are Boyz II Men, Jodeci, and Drew Hill.
Yeah, this one's pretty easy for me, Pat. That you made this one really easy. I think you already got it in order here. So I'm going Drew Hill with bronze, Jodeci with silver, and Boyz II Men with gold. Boyz II Men's the standard in male vocal groups of the 90s, in my opinion. I think they really New Edition sort of brought that different kind of view of the male vocal band of the 90s, kind of bringing back that Motown style of putting 5 dudes together and having them make R&B songs. And then Boyz II Men brought it to a whole nother level. And in terms of talent, much more talented, in my opinion, than a New Edition or even a Jodeci or Drew Hill, top to bottom. And the sound that they created at the time. In the 1990s, did more people fall in love to Boyz II Men's albums than any other album at the time? Like, they were tops of the charts. I was a kid in the 90s. The skate rank couples dances was all Boyz II Men. That's who was doing it.
I saw a documentary where groups like Backstreet Boys and NSYNC were talking about the inspiration that Boyz II Men actually was to them.
Yeah.
I actually do disagree with you quickly here.
Yeah.
Drew Hill's the bronze, but I'm not just gonna throw.
I love Drew Hill.
Yeah. I love Drew Hill, man.
Yes.
I
think they're more on the. I think Drew Hill belongs in the conversation probably with Jagged Edge and 112.
Sure, maybe. Boyz II Men is more popular, no question. But for me personally, man, this is where we're gonna have our first of what ultimately will become a lot of disagreements through the weeks here. I actually would have Jodeci with the gold. Jodeci was my favorite male R&B group. I thought they had the best actual R&B music. I think Boyz II Men had the more commercial, successful music. But anyway, for me,
I think Jodeci's has a better album.
Yeah.
I don't know that they have the sustained success of Boyz II Men. And even though Boyz II Men sort of fell off in the after kind of the mid 90s, like they still had some success in the late 90s. They still had some good albums beyond that, where Casey and JoJo sort of went off and did their own thing. I think if you add the body of work Casey and JoJo had to Jodeci, then I think that's ultimately trumps it, because Casey and JoJo in those early 2000s essentially was still kind of that Jodeci sound and was just blanketed in the airwaves with great songs. So they probably had more long-term success when they split off on their own, but Boyz II Men's still out there doing their thing.
Yeah, they are. Real quick, I'm going to penalize Boyz II Men ever so slightly because I've seen them in concert before, and as great as they are on record, as good as they are in the studio, I thought they were absolutely horrible.
When did you see them though?
Yeah, it was quite a while ago, but it wasn't recent, so it was a while ago too.
Okay,
so I know where you were going. All right. Last category here, Rocky movies, and again, I only listed 3 as a choice, so I know some people were like, "Where's Rocky 1 or where's Rocky 5?" Well, they're not in here. The 3 choices are Rocky 2, Rocky 3, Rocky 4.
Yeah. First of all, I think most of the Rocky movies are pretty dumb. I do. I think they're not great written. I think most of them are poorly acted. Not fantastic acted. I think they're low budget movies as well. I mean, I get it. They're fun. Rocky 1's fun. And I used to love when it would come on TV on whatever USA Network as a kid. Like, they're fun movies. I get it. But ultimately, like, the storylines are just ridiculous. Like, some of these storylines that they come up with in these Rocky movies are absolutely absurd. The dialogue is terrible in most of these films. But I get why people like them, right? In ranking these ones, I actually think you picked some of the worst Rocky movies to talk about. But I will say, I think so. 4 is so we'll go backwards. I think my order is 3, 2, 4. So bronze is 3, silver's 2, and 4 is gold. To me, because Rocky 4 is traveling to Russia.
Yes.
Right, and so Creed dies.
Creed dies in 4.
And that one, that's honestly one of the toughest scenes I remember as a kid. Like, really a movie, like, feeling impact. When Apollo Creed dies, like, I was upset as a kid. And so I think, like, having that, and then, like, the scenes of getting ready in Russia, like, that was a badass movie. All the lights and the fighting and stuff. Like, it was probably one of
the soundtrack was elite.
Elite soundtrack. I feel like for Rocky 4, they finally got like a well-produced movie together. Rocky 1 was like low budget, terribly produced, and like,
and it won an Oscar. It's crazy. I agree with you though.
Yeah. And 4, I feel like they finally got the production figured out. And I think it was ultimately maybe I don't even know if it's the best of the whole series, but it's definitely the best in this rating, in my opinion. And then 2 was the where he wins
rematch. He wins the rematch against Creed.
Wins the rematch against Creed.
Not a lot of action. A lot of storytelling. Not much on the action side.
We still had Apollo Creed, and I think it was more of a realistic, like, boxing story.
Sure.
Right. Like what was it? The fight got canceled, or no, that was the first one. Fight got canceled. The first one. You had this sort of rivalry building. Yeah. It's like more typical of what you would see in the boxing world, where the 3 just felt like pretty over the top, having Mr.
T. See, this is where I disagree with you. And this is why these are
Mr. T doesn't belong in any movie.
These are going to be fun. I would, and this is going to be unpopular. Purist Rocky fans are going to hate on both of us. I would have Rocky 2 as the bronze as well. I would have Rocky 4 as the silver. You said a lot of the reasons why. And again, that soundtrack was just amazing. I loved Rocky 3 though. This is where I disagree with you. To me, that gets the gold. You want to talk about someone dying? Mickey dies. To this day, if we were doing a watch along on YouTube right now, you'd see tears in my eyes when Mickey ultimately dies. You have Clubber Lang, a new character. You have Apollo and Rocky coming together, which is over the top. You are right. I'm not saying you're wrong about that. Him going to California to train, the beach scene where Adrian's got to inspire Rocky because he's down and out. I got Rocky as getting the gold, man.
But. And so one other take on this, I think Creed might be my favorite Rocky movie.
Really? It's pretty good. I
like it a lot.
No, 3 and 4 are still my 2 in that order. Creed's all right.
I liked Creed a lot. I think it was finally Stallone actually having some acting.
All right, guys, that's going to do it for this Casual Friday. This was fun, and by the way, I look forward to doing more of these. Like I said, we're gonna talk Bills every week, but we're gonna talk about some Buffalo stuff, some pop culture stuff, and we'll have some fun segments like this as well. Again, that's every Friday. Make sure you follow Aaron on Twitter at Aaron Quinn 716. Make sure you check out the Cover One Buffalo podcast. They're on live after Bills games, and they also have a preview show during the season as well. I'll put a link to that in the show notes. Again, this is going to be different. You and Greg, you guys got that chemistry, and you guys are great at talking football. We'll do a little bit of that, but this is going to be different as well. So you won't get bored with Aaron, whether it's Cover One Buffalo or whether it's on this podcast. Thanks, brother, for doing this, man. I appreciate you.
Appreciate you, man.
All right. Talk to you guys next week.